Hey everyone, welcome to episode 20 of Tuesday Tips. This is going to be the last intermediate week. So that means next week I'm going to be putting up some walkthrough solves for 5x5, 6x6, and 7x7 using kind of what I believe to be like intermediate level of solving. So for this last intermediate week I'm going to be talking about another very common mistake that people make, which is getting too attached to partially done edges. This is valid on 5, 6, and 7. But it's kind of something more common on 6 and 7. So to illustrate this really nicely, I'm going to show you, I'll start off with the 7x7. So say we're doing 7x7, and say we're doing, let me set this up. So say we're doing 7x7, and we just finished our centers. We just finished our centers, and somehow we got into this position. It's not realistic because they're all sliced up, but we got into this position, and we see red and white. We're like, oh man, red and white are nice. There's already 2 pieces done. For the record, 2 pieces done is nothing special. You should really be looking for 3. But so we see red and white, and we're like, oh man, red and white's good. I want to do red and white, but so you shouldn't really just be looking for the red and white pieces and ignoring everything else. When you're looking for pieces on the cube, you want to be looking. When you track pieces, you look at the entire cube and you also keep an eye out for red and white, but you want to be seeing everything. So in this case, what I see here is there's 2 red and white, and we're looking for red and white, and there's a red and white piece right here, but there's also 3 green and whites on the top right here, and the 4th green and white right there. And so even though that we've already looked at this red and white, and we know, like, just because that we decided we're doing red and white, that doesn't make it special for any reason whatsoever. Like, green is objectively better at this point because we can see 4 green and white pieces right here, and while there's only 3 red and white pieces. Additionally, the inserts to pair these 4 pieces up are very easy. So like the entire like misconception here is that a lot of people will ignore this and will still do the red and white and just completely ignore these green and whites. And a lot of times people will just slice these out and just completely break up this already like kind of freely made edge. So what you should be doing in this scenario is something fairly different. If you're, I guess this is for an intermediate solver, I would recommend, what I would recommend doing is, I would recommend inserting the green and whites and removing the red and whites at the same time. That way you're not breaking up the red and whites, they'll be there later. And so therefore, you'll have them for later, and you can still focus on the better green and white edge here. For more advanced solvers, this is kind of more an advanced tip. What I would recommend doing is actually, I do in this specific case, since I had the red and white in the green and white edge, I'd insert the green and whites so that I can pair up the red and whites, and then put in the other green and white edge at the same time as pulling out the red and white edge, which ended up being the same number of moves, but I've also paired up 3 red and whites, which I now when I'm looking at the rest of the cube, I'm looking for green and white and red and white, and essentially everything, but so I kind of know that that's there for later. So yeah, that's kind of the main like misconception, is that just because you started looking for a piece does not mean it's like any better. Especially a big example would be a lot of newer cubers, like in this case they see, oh, red and blue, there's 2 pieces of red and blue, they're good. Well, first of all, that's completely wrong. Having 2 pieces, especially when they're both flipped on 7x7, is just, that's not a good start for an edge. You want to be looking for 3 in the same edge, or at least 2 that are not flipped. They're like, oh, we need to find red and blue, and so they find this red and blue, and they find this red and blue, they find this red and blue, but, or they could have just, I mean, there's already 3 blue and yellows right here, so just switch to blue and yellow, and the next one happens to you right there. Oh, they're all right here. That's really nice. Yeah. So yeah, it's like just not getting hung up on, especially if you can't find, like, don't get hung up on edges where that you've, just because you've started an edge doesn't mean you have to do that one next. If you find something better, go for that. It's really common, especially if like for some reason you just can't find this one piece and you see something better, just switch to the better thing. Yeah, I guess on 7x7 is the one where it's the most obvious because you have more edges. But I mean, on 6x6 this happens too. I'm looking for like green and yellow, and like all of a sudden, let's pretend that I'm looking for blue and yellow, and I see, oh, green and white. I should switch to green and white. It's better. There's nothing. You definitely want to save the blue and yellows together if it's nice by pulling it out. But yeah, you definitely want to keep track of everything, kind of, especially that's nice because I saved these blue and yellows. I noticed this blue and yellow edge, and now I have it right there to finish off. Yeah, there's going to be a video in the advanced series kind of more about how to do multiple edges at the same time, which gets really confusing and is pretty difficult to master, as you have to know what your capabilities are, because if you try and do too much at the same time, you'll screw it up and be slow. But that's kind of something for more advanced talk. It might actually be kind of pushed to the super advanced series. But yeah, so I'll see you guys next week for some walkthrough videos.